Hello and welcome to another point blank tutorial. In this video, Chris Carter is going to show us how to make a morphing bass line in Native Instruments synth Massive. Anyways, please enjoy.
In this video we're going to take a look at some examples of morphing bass type sounds, and the key to this type of sound is working with the wavetables in a synth like Massive. So what I'm going to do is choose an appropriate wavetable, and there's a few that are particularly good for kind of twisted, quite distorted types of sounds, and this just comes down to the waveforms that have been selected and placed in these tables. Most of them are fairly obvious from the description, things like vulgar, distortion, but there's other things like carbon, scrapyard, chrome, and something we're going to use here called kangaroo, which is quite well suited to distorted sounds. And if we just drop the pitch of the oscillator down a couple of octaves and modulate the wavetable position here, you can see already that what we have is a combination of quite a nice kind of sub character with a kind of distorted edge to the sound. So what we're going to do is use that as a basis, and I'm going to select another wavetable. I'm going to choose carbon this time, and you can see I've turned oscillator 1 off, and if we have a quick listen to carbon, again we'll drop this down a couple of octaves. That has some really nice textures that we find that we can sweep through. So what we can do is use both of these wavetables and this wavetable parameter to put some kind of evolving, moving or morphing texture into the sound. Before we go any further, we might like to thicken the sound and make it more stereo. We could do that using the voicing tab here. It's going to be a monophonic sound. But if we increase the number of voices, and I'm firstly just going to do this from 1 to 2, we can now slightly detune those 2 voices and also increase the pan position. You can hear how now those are panned left and right. We need to be careful with basses. We probably don't want to pan it too wide. So what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of stereo character there. I might also try increasing the number of voices from 2 to 4. And you hear how the detuning comes into effect a bit more obviously there. What we really need to do now is to find a way to modulate the wavetable positions. So this is going to be using a combination of LFOs or envelopes. Firstly, if we just take an LFO, I could assign that to the wavetable position, and depending on the wavetable, we might choose to modulate a relatively wide or narrow range. Kangaroo I think we can afford to be a bit wider with because there's not that many waves in the wavetable. We can hear there's a regular cycling pattern in the waveform there, which we might de-emphasize just by slowing down the LFO slightly. We could also introduce another modulation source, such as an envelope, which will just slightly disturb the simple pattern that we've set up. And now let's also add a bit more movement to the sound using the carbon wavetable, and we could just modulate this using an envelope. And what I could do with the envelope is actually set this up to be some kind of loop. I'm just going to turn the instrument down before I do this. And we can hear there's way too much modulation there because there's so many waves within the carbon wavetable, so I'm just going to reduce this range. And wherever we put this, and whatever the speed of our loop, we're we're going to get some slightly different results. And this is something that we could also choose to modulate later on by assigning a macro through a range, so that we'll be able to, as well as using the envelope, just shift where that envelope is controlling. For a bit more manual control of the sound. And we could just name that macro so that we know what it is later on. Now that we've put the movement in the sound using modulation, we could enhance that by using some distortion, particularly the shapers that we find in the insert effects. So I could choose a sine shaper and maybe a parabolic shaper, and the effect of these will be determined by where they are in the routing of the instrument. I'm just going to move insert number 2 so that it comes here after filter number 2, and as you can see at the moment I'm listening to an equal output of both filter number 1 and number 2. And if we just increase the distortion amount now, and we'll do the same for the parabolic shaper. We don't want to push this too far because we'll lose all the definition in the sound. But there's no right level of distortion. We could also think about increasing some distortion or overdrive on a send effect here. Maybe we'll just slightly widen the sound whilst we're here. Not forgetting that we also have feedback available. And this is very unpredictable and just depends on all of the other parameters that we have in the instrument. And you can see that it's starting to lose any kind of clarity, so we'll just back all of these off. We're just looking to enhance the sound slightly rather than completely destroy it, seeing as it's very distorted already. And finally we'll just look at putting some movement into the sound using these filters, and there's all kinds of options here. We could potentially just put some kind of subtle movement or sweep, so that would be an all pass or a notch or a band reject. And if we increase the resonance, just hear that slight sweep there. The resonance determining how obvious that is. We could do the same thing down here with something similar, like a band reject. So I could use some LFOs here, but what I don't really want to have is a kind of regular cycling movement. So instead we'll go for another available envelope here. And perhaps we will use an LFO cycling at a different speed here through a range. We'll just try something like that to start with. What we might also do, now that we've put the movement into the sound, is go back to our voicing and think about how wide we want this sound to be. And so through various combinations of these sorts of parameters, with the wavetable modulation at the center of the patch, we can achieve these kind of distorted morphing textures.
Thank you guys for watching that video. This was part of our free online sample course of our BA Honours Music Production and Sound Engineering degree. If you want to check out the rest of that course, go on to pointblankmusicschool.com and check it out there. Thank you guys for watching, and of course, like, comment, subscribe, and check out our Instagram, all that good stuff. All that stuff down there in the description box. See you guys next time.